This is a video record of our trip to Europe from July 9th to 27th, 2019. This is part 3, which chronicles our trip between July 19th and 21st and includes our one full day in Venice and the first 2 days in Rome. The part 2 video ended with our arrival in Venice and taking a cruise down the Grand Canal. I will start this part 3 video with our full day in Venice. On the morning of Friday, July 19th, we had breakfast, then we walked with the rest of our group to the boat dock near our hotel. Right after that, the boat arrived to take us back to St. Mark's Square. It was there we took another optional experience. This one was called Hidden Venice. It was led by this local tour guide. The guide not only took us into areas of Venice that tourists rarely see, but she also talked about Venice history. For example, she explained that there were numerous neighborhoods throughout Venice called campos, and that each campo has a small square, a church, and a well. Among other things, we got to see some Venetian oddities, like this private little bridge built for the express use of the occupants of the house on the left. We really had an opportunity to rub elbows with the locals. This was definitely not a glamour tour, but we really enjoyed it. The hidden part of our tour stopped at St. Mark's Basilica in St. Mark's Square. We walked around the corner of the basilica and got these videos of the front of the basilica. The tour itself ended with a walk through the basilica, which was made even more enjoyable because our guide had special passes that allowed us to bypass all the huge lines of people waiting to enter the basilica. We were not allowed to take pictures inside the basilica, so I got these pictures off the internet. After we toured the inside of the basilica, we walked outside and I got this video of these 4 bronze horses. The horses were stolen by the Venetians during the sack of Constantinople in 1204. The horses remained at the basilica until looted by Napoleon in 1797, but they were returned in 1815. By the way, the horses you see today are copies. The originals are in a museum inside the basilica. To the left of the basilica is the Torre dell'Orologio, a tower with these 2 bronze men on top that strike the bell on the hour. Starting just to the left of the Torre dell'Orologio, here is St. Mark's Square. And here is the bell tower. Next, we went on another optional experience, a gondola ride. We started at gondola station Bacino Orsiolo. We proceeded to the Grand Canal, cruised along a small section of the canal, and returned to the Bacino. Just after we got into our gondola, these 2 men got in with us. At first we didn't know why until the one started to play the accordion. Then we thought, isn't this nice? We're going to have a musical accompaniment on our ride. Then the other man started to sing.
Passeggeri, venite via, Santa Lucia, Santa Lucia.
All during the ride, people along the canals and bridges stopped and looked and listened. We felt so special. few minutes later, we started out onto the Grand Canal. Here again is the Rialto Bridge. The singer took a break during our time on the Grand Canal. The couple in the black water taxi on the left look like newlyweds. After a few minutes on the Grand Canal, we cruised back into one of the side canals. Once there, the singer began again, better than before.
When boy meet girl, is what I say. When the moon hits your eyes like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you have too much wine, that's amore. Bells will ring, ting-a-ling-a-ling, ting-a-ling-a-ling, and you sing Vita Bella. Hearts will play tippy-tippy-tay, like a gay tarantella. When the stars make you drool just like a pasta passo, that's amore. When you dance down the street with clouds at your feet, you're in love. When you walk in a dream, but you know you are not dreaming, signore. Scusami, but you sing like in on Napoli, that's amore. Venezia è il sole splendido di mille canzoni, l'eco lontano riporterò. Questa laguna addormentata ricorderò, e parla il mio cuore solo d'amore, sempre d'amore. Quando tu verrai, dimmi quando, l'anno, il giorno, l'ora in cui non ci lasceremo mai. Ogni istante aspetterò, fino a quando improvviso ti vedrò. Sorridente accanto a me, se vuoi dirmi di sì, devi dirlo perché non ha senso per me la mia vita senza te. Sì, devi dirlo perché non ha senso per me la mia vita senza te. Ogni istante aspetterò, fino a quando tu baciando mi dirai non ci lasceremo mai, ci lasceremo mai.
Thank you so much.
After the ride, we had the rest of the day to ourselves. As it turns out, there is a Hard Rock cafe next to where the gondola ride started and ended, so we had lunch there. This is a video I shot from our table in the restaurant. After lunch, we walked through St. Mark's Square and wound our way back again to the Rialto Bridge. We wanted to make sure to get better daytime photos of the bridge than we had from our last trip to Venice. As I said before, Venice is a series of islands. One of them, Murano, is the place where the famous Murano glass is made. Robin was dying to go there, so after lunch we walked to the water bus stop, got on a water bus, and set off for Murano. After a 25-minute ride, we were approaching the Murano bus stop. We arrived at the Murano Navigiro water bus stop. By this time, it was already mid-afternoon and was very hot, so we did an abbreviated tour of the island, ending at another water bus stop, Murano Colonna. Next, you'll see some of the sights we saw along our walking path. As you can see, Murano doesn't have a lot of tourists, which after St. Mark's Square was a welcome relief. We saw many interesting window displays, many of which enticed us to go in and explore. Some of the shops had little or nothing that enticed Robin, and some had so much that it was difficult for her to choose. As we continued our walking tour, it started to get hotter and hotter, and we started to run out of energy. We made a few more stops, bought a couple of Cokes at a local market, and walked to the Colonna water bus stop. By the time we reached the end of our walk, we were exhausted. Robin had bought these 8 necklaces. We took the water bus back to Venice. On the way there, we cruised by the island of San Michele, which is only used as a cemetery. There are several famous people buried there, including Igor Stravinsky and Ezra Pound. We rode the water bus back to Venice, returned to our hotel, and rested up. Later, we ventured out from the hotel and found this quaint restaurant by one of the small canals. I again ordered spaghetti, and it was the best I had during the entire trip. After dinner, I went inside to pay our bill and noticed one of the walls covered with paper money from countries all over the world. A very interesting idea for decorating. On our way back to the hotel, we saw another blast from the past, an actual payphone. The next morning, Saturday, July 20th, we boarded our bus again and took off for Rome. The distance was 330 miles, which took most of the day. Along the route, we were surprised by the number of fields growing sunflowers. We finally arrived at our hotel, the K Boutique Hotel, which was in a much better location than the Rome hotel used on our last trip to Italy. The room was the largest we had during this entire trip. It even had a 14-foot ceiling. Just after we got into our room, they brought our luggage, and I saw that the handle on one of my suitcases was broken. We still had 2 more flights before we got home, so I was worried that this might cause problems. Our tour guide Natalie assured me that the suitcase would get fixed, but I was still worried. Undeterred, we dashed out of the hotel to do some sightseeing. The first landmark we visited was also the closest to our hotel. We only had to walk a half block from the hotel and then up these stairs to see the Basilica of St. Peter's in Chains, which houses the actual chains they used on St. Peter before his death. The Basilica is off most tourists' radar, so there were no crowds to fight. The chains are kept in a beautiful glass case under the altar. We never did find out why these chains are not displayed in St. Peter's Basilica, but I'm sure there's a good reason. The Basilica of St. Peter in Chains is also the home of this famous statue of Moses carved by Michelangelo. Note the striking resemblance between this Moses and Charlton Heston, who played him in the movie The 10 Commandments. After we left the Basilica, we walked another half block to this street and then to the Colosseum. Next to the Colosseum was the Arch of Constantine. Built in 315 AD, it is the largest Roman triumphal arch. The arch spans the Via Triumphalis, the route taken by emperors when they entered the city in triumph. After seeing the Colosseum, we walked back to our hotel. While we were waiting to be taken to our last included dinner, Robin and I went up to the roof of the hotel and took these pictures of Rome at dusk. The only important structure we could see was the Victor Emmanuel Monument, which we would see up close later that night. The roof was set up with a small sunning area with some patio chairs and this hot tub. We never went up to use it, but I wish we had. A while later, we joined our group for our last included dinner of the trip. It was at this restaurant in downtown Rome. The food was mediocre at best. This was my lasagna, and this was Robin's eggplant. The service was terrible. We had to ask multiple times for anything we wanted before it was brought to us. After we returned to our hotel, Robin and I joined 2 other tour members, Helen and her daughter Melina, in a walk to the Colosseum for some nighttime picture taking. Luckily, Rome, like Paris, is very well lit at night, which makes picture taking a joy. And here again is the Arch of Constantine. Later, we walked to the Victor Emmanuel Monument, honoring the king who unified Italy in 1870. That's him on the horse. Just opposite the monument is this little plaza. Today, the brown building on the left is the Library of Architecture and Art, but during World War II, it was the headquarters of Mussolini. He used to give speeches to crowds of Italians from the balcony on the middle of the second floor with the flag. Here is an archival picture showing the building and the crowd just before Mussolini came out to speak. On the way back to the hotel, we passed other Roman ruins like these, which were also very artistically lit. The next day, July 21st, we boarded a new bus to take us to the first stop of a guided walking tour of Rome. This lady was our local tour guide. She was excellent. On the way to the drop-off point, we passed by the old Roman walls. It was interesting to see that they have converted some of the old guard towers into apartments. And here we are at our first destination, the Trevi Fountain. You probably know that there is a ritual connected with the fountain. It goes that if you throw a coin into the fountain with your right hand over your left shoulder, you will return to Rome. And up next is yet another traveler who performs this ritual.
Here's my coin. Just hold your arm up like that. Hold your arm up like that. Yay!
Not to be outdone, and without any practice, one of our fellow travel members, Melina, matches Robin's achievement.
You ready?
Now, even though it was 9 o'clock in the morning, we could tell this was going to be a really hot day, and we were right. It is interesting to note that even though we were among the first to arrive, the crowds were already starting to grow at the fountain. After visiting the fountain, we started the walking tour of Rome. We first walked past the Temple of Hadrian from the 1st century AD. This building is interesting because they have uncovered the base of the original temple to show how much lower the height of the ground was 2,000 years ago. We next walked to the Pantheon, also from the 1st century. Originally it was a Roman temple and later a Roman Catholic church. It has been in continuous use for the last 2,000 years. The inside of the Pantheon was quite amazing. The Pantheon still boasts the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. No, you're not seeing things. That is a hole in the roof. Next, we walk to the Piazza Navona, one of the prettiest and most famous of all the Roman piazzas. The tour ended at the piazza and we were on our own for the rest of the day. We did a little bit of shopping in the piazza, then we walked back in the direction of the Pantheon looking for a place to have lunch. We saw a few signs announcing local McDonald's, but following the signs led us in circles. By now we were hot and hungry and started to snap at each other until I saw some white umbrellas that looked like a restaurant ahead. We continued and saw that it was a restaurant, so we got a table and collapsed. Then we noticed the restaurant was opposite the Pantheon. Take it away, Robin.
Good morning, or let's say almost good afternoon. It's 11:40, and we've already walked 7,700 steps, and we're sitting across from the Pantheon having a lunch at a pizzeria. You can't get any better than this. It's pretty exciting.
We ordered 2 pizzas. They were way overpriced, but the view was worth it. After lunch, I tried to put on a show to pay for our food, but the waiter wasn't impressed. I reluctantly paid our bill, then we set out for the first sight I had planned to see that afternoon. On the way there, Robin got this photo of a priest and 2 soldiers having a friendly conversation. Talk about a juxtaposition. When we arrived at our first destination, the Basilica of St. Maria Minerva, we found it was closed for repairs. Not being one to give up, I have done my due diligence and found the following pictures of the Basilica on the internet to give us all a rough idea of what we missed. Next, we walked to the Church of St. Ignatius of Loyola. The inside was beyond gorgeous. Unfortunately, the video I shot didn't show what I wanted, but I was able to use its soundtrack on which you can hear the members of the Basilica Choir who were practicing for the evening services. On our way to our next destination, we passed by the Rome Disney store. Of course, it was a must-see for Robin, so we went in. Our next destination was the Spanish Steps. We had planned on seeing more, but it was so hot and we were so tired, we found a taxi and rode back to our hotel. After we had rested up, we walked a half a block to this restaurant, which was across the street from the steps to the Church of St. Peter in Chains.